Greetings, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another episode of Friday Morning at the Funhouse alongside Mr. Martin Popoff. What's going on, my friend?
Yes, morning, sir. Looking forward to this one. This is kind of a neat idea that we've got going here. But yeah,
Think so.
summer is in full swing here in Toronto. We're ready to roll.
Ready to roll, ready to rock, ready to roll. Yes, we're
Absolutely.
doing that in New York too. We had a power outage for 18
You
hours
had a storm
recently.
like crazy, right? Yeah.
It was probably one of the most furious storms I've seen. It was only like maybe 20 minutes long, but man, it came through with a vengeance. And then we were left here with nothing for, practically a full 24 hours, and that kind of sucked. But whatever. It's prompting me to go and purchase that generator finally. Because enough of this. It doesn't happen that often, but when it does, man, you're just so inconvenienced. And my wife is like, "We got to do this." I'm like, "I know, I know, I know." So we're gonna do. It. We're gonna do it.
Nuts. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. So today we've got an interesting episode. I guess this is kind of like the perfect sequel to what we talked about last week. And this is, but here we're going and we're looking at four classic British bands, arguably four of the big new wave of British heavy metal bands, although one of them is always kind of in question. But we're looking at Iron Maiden, we're looking at Motorhead, Saxon, and Def Leppard. This is kind of like the big four. And kind of, the hair metal, glam metal years. How did they navigate through this? Did it affect them? Did it change them at all? Did they not care and they just did their own thing? That's what we're going to kind of get into. So Martin's going to talk about both Iron Maiden and Motorhead. I'm going to do Saxon and Def Leppard, and we'll kind of navigate through each band and talk a little bit about, what happened to them during specifically like what, 83, 82, 83 through the rest of the decade. And did this whole movement that was, really big here in the States, did that affect them in their music at all, their looks, and all this stuff? We're going to kind of look at everything. So, Martin, I'll have you kind of kick us off with your first band. Maybe you have something to add here as well.
Yeah, that's a perfect description. And just to address this idea of what are the new wave of British heavy metal big four, I think it's pretty clear that these are. Except as you mentioned, people always get their backs up about Motorhead being included in this. I think they're completely a new wave of British heavy metal band. They start in '75, of course, but '77 first album, so that's an anomaly. But really, they are kind of right in there inventing the new wave of British heavy metal in '79 with two albums. But once you get to 1980, they are in there playing with all these bands, releasing singles, non-LP singles, color. There's patches that they're literally like the iconic new wave of British heavy metal band, except for maybe we know the bike wheel and their sound is a little different or whatever, but so much about them is completely new wave of British heavy metal. They're on Bronze, they're a big band through this whole thing. And then the other one that the one I never get that people think should be in here sometimes is Judas Priest. I just hear that one come up quite often, right? And we could talk about Gillan, we could talk about Ozzy Osbourne and things like that. But I just wanted to address that Motorhead is part of this big four. I got two other reasons here too. So, number one, well, the reason that these four count for a show like this is almost all of them went away. They almost all dissolved. They did nothing, sort of thing. So even if you had some other ones that were kind of big, they literally have broken up, or they're really fizzling out, or they're not there through this whole thing. The other thing that's funny of why I always put these four in the big four is that I've made that argument before, how you would be perfectly sensible if you didn't want to be, the music snob and, oh, look how much I know about the new wave of British heavy metal. You could literally have a top 10 new wave of British heavy metal albums that have 7 albums from Def Leppard and Iron Maiden in it.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And, put Motorhead in there. You could easily fill out the rest with Motorhead. You could fill out the rest with Saxon. You don't have to go to the obscurities to say these are actually probably the best new wave of British heavy metal albums, right? So that's funny as well, right? So yeah, I'll kick off with Iron Maiden. So how did Iron Maiden navigate the hair metal years? I think they basically for the most part ignored it, to their credit. They did not succumb to this thing. And they made, but there's a couple interesting twists. So, we can maybe include Power Slave in this thing. So I often say that the new wave of British heavy metal ends in 1984. And I think Power Slave is clearly absolutely right in there like a dirty shirt, part of the new wave of British heavy metal. They are that sort of band still on Power Slave. So the first one that really makes a difference, and we are immersed in the hair metal years big time after a couple of years, September 29th, 1986. They put out Somewhere in Time. It goes platinum, so they're a big band, so they kind of no reason to give it up for this hair metal thing. There's no panic really, but there is the thing about the guitar synths, and I still think even though this is not really a hair metal thing, but I can picture them recording in Bahamas, and it's just not a new wave of British heavy metal kind of thing. It's closer to California, right? But no, Heaven Can Wait, super melodic chorus on there. Wasted Years, I always thought was a little hair metally. Deja Vu is a little hair metally, but for the most part, I think this is just there might be a little bit of bloat, a little bit of corporate feel, very, very little. They haven't really changed much, right? April 11th, 1988, Seventh Son of a Seventh Son, same thing. I mean, they basically have not succumbed to the hair metal thing. They haven't sold out, as they say, right? They're recording this at Musicland in Munich, right? So again, it's not like they're recording in LA or anything like that. Infinite Dreams on there's a little melodic. I always thought Can I Play with Madness is a little bit of a play, with the big sort of gang harmonic sweet chorus on it. It's very hummable. So I'll get back to the big point in a second. But, October 1st, 1990, No Prayer for the Dying, same thing. They really don't. They're just carrying on being Iron Maiden. Kind of the same way I feel like AC/DC just carried on being AC/DC sort of thing. They're recording at the Barnyard, right? So they're at, they're not recording in LA. They're literally recording on Steve's property at this point. It's actually less produced than the last two albums. So they're not being a big glossy corporate band, that's for sure. But Holy Smoke with the Preacher's theme, that's a little Aussie Miracle Man-ish, right? Hooks in You sounds like a hair metal song. Bring Your Daughter to the Slaughter, I'll get back to that in a second, a little hair metally. And Adrian is gone, replaced by Yannick Gers. But so there's a couple things on here where you think, almost like our episode about did Slayer go new metal, right? There's just a couple little hints where you go, the label probably appreciated these songs and thought maybe they could get in there and maybe we can get a little more of a US hit kind of thing. Fear of the Dark, we're up to May 11th, 1992. So we're well past, hair metal's basically the doors are shutting, right? The big pink furry doors are shutting on hair metal, right? So we've got recorded the Barnyard again. From Here to Eternity, melodic acoustic guitar, gang vocal, Wasting Love. So this was the big one everybody complained about. Iron Maiden turns into a power ballad, right? So that's a little hair metally. Chains of Misery, total stripper rock, hair metal chorus. It sounds like a Whitesnake song, right? And Weekend Warriors, a hair metal song too, with a hair metal sort of lyric. So they're kind of saying we're still Iron Maiden, we're still like this weird new wave of British heavy metal, The Who. We still have this Iron Maiden, lo-fi way of recording. We still got our personality. But again, I think on these two albums they try a couple things. The last point I wanted to make though is that in 1989, Adrian Smith puts out the ASAP project. So he quits the band to go hair metal. And then Bruce Dickinson almost kind of quits the band to go hair metal. May 8th, 1990, he puts out Tattooed Millionaire. So he puts out kind of a hair metal album. And had that done better, I'm sure he would have been gone a little sooner. But the writing was on the wall, so to speak, and he's only there for two more albums. And he's doing a little bit of that Rob Halford thing, where he's realizing that his band is stagnating. And he's going to want to leave for stagnation purposes. But, like I say, I mean, had that been a huge success and all of a sudden all the spotlight is on me and it's my name on the tin, Bruce Dickinson. And had he been like a massive hair metal hit, like a Whitesnake or a Guns N' Roses album, he might have not have been there for at least certainly Fear of the Dark. I mean, No Prayer for the Dying was coming up within about 7 months or so. So bottom line, I find it interesting that two guys here seem to go hair metal, and the band dabbles in it a little bit. but they don't move to LA. They don't record in LA, and they're still recording the same old clunky loose bolts, lovable Iron Maiden thing. They're still remaining a new wave of British heavy metal band. So that's my summary on Maiden, how they navigated the hair metal years.
I also think too, and again, we're going to talk about during this episode, there is the whole image thing, right? And specifically like the MTV videos, which most of the glam and hair metal bands here in the US took full advantage of that medium to kind of get their point across and gain lots of fans. And I don't think, if you look back on the Iron Maiden videos that they did during this period, none of them really fell into that trap at all. I mean, so many of them were just kind of like performance videos, shows them on stage playing and whatnot. They never went too overboard with that. So I don't think Maiden, from an image perspective, really tried to fit into that mold. But like you said, there are some songs here and there. But yeah, for the most part, I think Maiden was just always being Maiden. And I don't think they really ever followed any trends much at all. So yeah.
The cover art stayed the same. I'm sure if you went through all the videos and all the promo photos, you might see somebody trying out, some little bit of wardrobe or whatever. But I can't picture any major curly perms on those guys or anything like that. Yeah,
not at all.
Yeah, cool.
All right, so let's move on to Saxon. So of course, Saxon in the early years totally fit the mold of what the new wave of British heavy metal was all about, right? The leather, the chains, the tough biker look, and all that sort of stuff. The album covers. I mean, does that look like a hair metal or glam metal album? No, not at all. I mean, look at the back, right? And then, of course, Strong Arm of the Law, Wheels of Steel, Denim and Leather. I mean, there's nothing here that fits into that scene. This is all straightforward riffing, very kind of primitive sounding, great stuff, great anthems, right? Everything you want from a new wave of British heavy metal band. But then you can make the argument, and it's my favorite Saxon album, I think it's Martin's as well, that on 1983's The Power and the Glory, we might be starting to see a little tendencies here. Specifically, I think on Redline and This Town Rocks, the kind of like the sleazier guitar tone, using pinch harmonics, the chorus, the kind of the gang chorus thing like that. I think it comes out just a hair on this album. Maybe not intentionally, maybe not following any trend, but I think maybe for the first time we start to hear a little bit of twist in the sound of Saxon. And I think on Crusader, all of a sudden now you have, and again, we see this a lot in albums to come, all these songs with rock in the title, right? Just Let Me Rock. You got Do It All For You. Very, very melodic, very hooky. Bad Boys Like to Rock and Roll. They're covering, speaking of glam metal, they're covering Set Me Free by Sweet, right? And I think here is where the tone definitely gets centered on the US market, because let's be honest, all these albums here didn't really sell much of anything over here. Most of them available only as imports. So it was really with this album that I think the band, the management, the record label really wanted them to crack here in America. They're playing some shows here fairly frequently. All of a sudden, Priest and Maiden and Def Leppard and Scorpions and all these other bands are really starting to make a name for themselves here in the States. And now you have all of the US bands really starting to do some stuff. So I think that they really wanted to focus on catchier melodies, less all about guitar riffs, more about hooks and things like that. Sailing to America, if that's not a stab at, trying to break it in America, I don't know what else is. And then you have 1985, so you have Innocence Is No Excuse, right? Another kind of trip further down this particular lane. I think this album holds up very well, but man, when you listen to it, this is all about, we're going to break big in America. Unfortunately, it didn't happen. I talked about the whole MTV thing, and I don't think that Saxon had the look, for one thing. I don't think they were marketable. We've talked about that before. They weren't marketable enough as
Pete,
that.
I'll interrupt you a bit. I mean, I won't talk, but I've got some pictures to show you, and you can keep talking. But
oh yeah, I have a whole slide deck I'm gonna show in a minute here. Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
They released Broken Heroes as a single. They made a video for that, but it's kind of like this really moody, epic ballad. Didn't light up Headbangers Ball at all. You got Simon Hanhart to the production on this album. It's very glossy. And here we go, Rockin' Again, Rock and Roll Gypsy, Call of the Wild, Gonna Shout, very just cliches everywhere. Everybody up, everybody up. It's very non-Saxon-ish. And really, this album isn't that heavy to begin with. So, and then they have the album cover too. And then things don't get much better. Rock the Nation, again, similarly, very melodic band trying to just come up with that big hit that's going to score with a wider audience. But it's, man, it's chock full of metal cliches everywhere. I mean, here we go. Rock the Nations, right? We came to rock. How many songs on the span of a couple albums are we going to throw rock in there, right? Ain't No Angel, Party Till You Puke, right? That sounds like, all right, well, if the guys in Motley Crue and all these other LA bands can talk about partying and all that stuff, we can do that as well, which is just kind of ridiculous. Plus, you got Waiting for the Night, Northern Lady, these semi ballads. This album just seems very, very forced. It's like, well, we have to break in America, otherwise we don't know what's going to happen, right? And then you add insult to injury, and then they put out 88's Destiny, and it starts off with a cover of Christopher Cross's Ride Like the Wind. I mean, if that doesn't tell you that they are just absolutely desperate for some kind of a hit, it's I Can't Wait Anymore, Song for Emma, We Are Strong. I mean, it's all just a real grasp for radio airplay. And it wasn't until 1991 Solid Ball of Rock that saw this, and I guess they kind of gave up on this whole idea, and they were like, all right, let's just be Saxon again. So after 8 years trying to chase a different audience, they then throughout the rest of the decade in the 90s just went back to doing what Saxon does best. And I want to, Martin was showing some pictures. I put together a whole host of shots here that I do want to show. Let's see, hold on. So just check some of this stuff out here. As soon as it loads, there we go. So this is early Saxon. So again, the leather, right? Kind of the goofy look, but still a bit more serious. Here's them on stage. Totally look like the British heavy metal upstarts that they were in '83. But then all of a sudden, who's this? Is that Whitesnake? Is that Queensryche? Who's that, right?
Look at the size of the hair on that one,
Yeah.
right? Everybody's got this massive full head of hair, right?
Yeah. I mean, look at Biff there. He's got the bandana, right? He's got the lovely ladies. It's just like, oh my God, it's getting ridiculous here. Look at them now. There's no more leather anymore. Now we got jean jackets and
that's the Def Leppard look, right?
100%. Yep. Wait, it gets worse. Look at this.
Yeah.
I mean, holy moly. And they did the end here. I mean, this is totally like the Def Leppard look here, right? So, and they still got the leather here, but it's just everything else. Okay, well, we'll stop there because I got more for Def Leppard.
Nice. Yeah, I took this out again too, which I've shown before, but this is this tour book for 85, 86, and then there's a little more there, right?
There we go. Yep.
That look. Let's see if we got another good one here. These little ones here.
Oh, the hats. Yeah. Oof.
Yeah.
Heavy metal guys should not be wearing hats.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yes. So what is your summary? How did they navigate the hair metal years?
Not successfully at all. They tried. So I think from Saxon, they really tried to get in there, just as a way to sell more albums and just kind of cross that line to get more popular here. And it basically failed miserably. And they just went back to being Saxon. And I think Saxon is one of those bands that were always destined to be kind of like middle of the pack as far as popularity and album sales and tours and things like that. And that's okay. And I think if they look back on it now, it's probably how they think about it. Would they have liked to have been as big as Priest or Maiden or Def Leppard or Scorpions or Rat or Motley Crue? I'm sure they would have liked to, but musically it just wasn't happening for them. And from an image perspective, they just weren't marketable in that way. So yeah, so they tried, kind of failed.
Nice. All right, my second and last one for today is Motorhead. So September 1984, they put out the No Remorse album, which is a compilation with 4 new tracks. The band has changed. We've got one guitarist, Brian Robertson, has been replaced by 2 guitarists, Wurzel and Phil Campbell. We've got Pete Gill on drums. So the cracks are already showing. The new wave of British heavy metal is ending. Motorhead is a new band. They're putting out a messy album. It's got some new studio tracks. It's got some, it's a compilation. So yeah, what's going on with Motorhead? Or are they breaking up? What's happening here? So then it's 2 years later, July 86, they put out Orgasmatron. They're on GWR, which they're now going to be starting to fight with. They recorded at Master Rock Studios in London. So it is the same band that was on No Remorse. Music wise though, on here, I mean, they're still all like true blue, an English band. Phil's from Wales, but English band, recording in England, based in England. It's 1986. We're well into the hair metal years. We've got actually a couple of props here. We don't. Okay, so we'll wait for that one. But Def Forever, Built for Speed, Dr. Rock is kind of like a shuffly sort of song. I almost feel like there's a little bit of a nod to what's going on in the world that's kind of a parallel to Iron Maiden, where they're basically still Motorhead. I mean, the rest of this album is still barnstorming, heavy, dirty, gritty Motorhead. August 1987, they put out the Rock and Roll album. That's this one here. They're still on GWR. They're still kind of fighting, but it's only a year later. It's basically self-produced because Guy Bidmead is basically considered an engineer. Let me kind of put him down a little bit. Phil Taylor is back in the band, but that's neither here nor there. There's problems with Phil. His head isn't in it. He's drinking. He's a wild man kind of thing. But Eat the Rich is on here. Rock and Roll are both a little rock and rolls. He's Stone Deaf in the USA. Now we get a mention of the USA, right? We get a song about the USA, Hello America kind of thing, right? Dogs is a little hair metal-y. All For You is pretty melodic. So you're starting to see a little more of this melody coming through, but more importantly, I mean, so much of it is still core Motorhead, but more importantly, fans ain't liking it very much. This album was not that well received. I don't think the album cover is very good either. October 1988, you get No Sleep at All, a live album. So what's going on with Motorhead? This kind of like, is it really time for a live album? Do we need this? This was kind of ignored. It wasn't much of a live album, but again, you think the cracks are showing what's going on. So 1990, Lemmy moves to LA. He moves to LA. He moves into, a small apartment, full of all his Nazi war memorabilia and stuff. And he's close to the Rainbow, and he becomes this legendary fixture that's always at the Rainbow, playing the machines and stuff, talking with people, drinking. So he becomes a real LA sort of figure. And he even says, okay, how does it? Motorhead Lemmy believes his move to Los Angeles. I think this was in Louder. I'm quoting here, Louder Sound. Believes his move to Los Angeles in the 90s changed the band's fortunes in the UK. The 68-year-old icon thinks audiences became more interested in them once they thought of them as an American act. So it's kind of interesting. He's like, oh, we're from this exotic land of LA now. And he thinks that it makes them look more special back home on home turf, because it's like, oh, you guys are big shots. You've moved to LA sort of thing, right? So yeah, here's a quote from Lemmy. He tells VH1, "The music business operates out of Los Angeles. That's it. Even if you live in New York, you're fooling yourself. And it was time for a change anyway, because the band was failing badly in England. We couldn't get arrested. Coming over here seems to make it acceptable in Britain again. It's weird. We're like a foreign band now. It's exciting to see us because we don't live there." So that's pretty interesting. There's a long gap of 4 years until you get to the 1916 album. It's the same lineup as Rock and Roll. It's Lemmy, Phil Wurtzel, and Phil Taylor. Phil Carson is managing them. They try to record with Ed Stasium, who's famous for the Ramones, but they go back. Apparently, like, he gets fired because he puts tambourines on some of the songs without them knowing, and he gets turfed. And Pete Solly is in, but Pete Solly is English as well. But on this album, 1916. So yeah, we're really late into this thing, right? So Motorhead's almost like sitting it out, not changing. They're still an English band through most of this, but This has Love Me Forever on it. It has Angel City with saxophone on it. They're nominated for a Best Metal Performance Grammy. So what is more hair metal in LA to be nominated than to be nominated for a Grammy, right? They lose to the Black Album, but Phil is out of control. He's going to be out of the band. But they've had this legal battle with this GWR label, and this kind of speaks to some of the the reason that they're not really firing on all cylinders or particularly active. Going to Brazil is kind of like a boogie song on here. Love Me Forever, power ballad. Um, Angel City, party boogie, rock and rollsy sort of thing. Ramones sounds like the Ramones. And in the liner notes to the album, they put, to the people we left behind, we didn't want to leave you, but we really had to go. This album is the better for it. Stale and on a treadmill in our career, a change was needed. We decided a change of locale was an idea to try, and we think it's done us good musically and attitude wise, which is even worse. Then September 17th, 1991, Ozzy puts out No More Tears, big, huge, massive corporate LA metal album. And Lemmy is a co-writer on 4 songs. So he's, again, instilling, embedded in this whole LA culture. And then they put out March or Die. I think I have March or Die hanging out here. Yeah. So March or Die, this is an album with a bad album cover. It's not a very well received album. We're up in August 92, so we're still sort of in the hair metal years. But what is hair metal about this album? So they cover a proto hair metal song in Ted Nugent's Cat Scratch Fever. Ted is a proto hair metal act. Tommy Aldridge is on drums, so he's he's from Black Oak, Arkansas, and all that stuff. Pat Travers band. I mean, but he's part of this LA scene basically, right? And he's there to be on drumming on this because he's part of this scene. He looks the part. And the drums are kind of stodgy, stolid on it. The recording is very cleaned up and pretty LA-ish on here. Ozzy guests on I Ain't No Nice Guy, which is like an acoustic ballad. It's got piano in it. So that's a very hair metal-y thing to do. Hellraiser is on here again. It was crap on No More Tears. It's crap here. Slash guests on You Better Run, which is like the stripper boogie rock song. So, and these things become part of the story of this album. You think of Ozzy guesting, Lemmy writing for Ozzy, Slash guesting. They're based in LA. So at this point, and then this is not a well-received album. And the narrative with all the fans is that it is a corporate LA album. It's not particularly hair metal, but it's got some nods to that, the same way we talked about Iron Maiden having a few nods to it. And then, arguably AC/DC had a few little things here and there. They dressed up a little, and it could be a little that way. So basically speaking, we've got the big things here are that they kind of get perceived as a band based out of LA, and they are based out of LA because Lemmy's the leader. And they put out these albums that are a little corporate-y, especially March or Die and 1916. Some people love it, some people don't. I'm kind of neither here nor there. But basically, those 3 albums in a row, Rock and Roll, 1916, and March or Die, are pretty low on my list for Motorhead albums. So I guess the summary is they have these legal problems. They're still this big English band, but they do make some nods, and you can see Lemmy literally telling you he's being careerist and moving to the hair metal scene to be part of this whole thing. So he's trying to warm his hands off the fire of this hair metal scene. So there's my Motorhead treatise. Oh, hang on. I've lost your audio. I'm not hearing you. I think it's my loose connection thing. So keep talking. Pete, can you hear me? Can you hear me? I have lost your audio, so you're gonna have to finish off this show, or yeah, or turn it over to me. I'll keep trying. I keep giving your credence, so I'll keep working on it. Pete, I ain't getting you back. I can't hear you, so you're gonna have to finish the show. Pete, if once you're done, you want me to throw my 2 cents in on Def Leppard, just point to me and I'll say now. Okay, so yeah, basically, Pyromania happens. It's funny. I was looking at the dates of this. January 20th, 83. I mean, that album's really early. I mean, the new wave of British heavy metal is still completely still happening at this point, right? Which is kind of crazy. But they go all the way up to August 3rd, 1987 for Hysteria. You know me, I just can't stand that album. I hate it to death. But January 8th, 1991, Steve Clark dies. So I mean, this is happening within this whole hair metal thing too. This morning before getting on here, I thought I'm gonna go play Adrenalize again and see if it's as bad as I thought. Adrenalize, I might even hate even more than Hysteria. It is absolutely brutal, brutal, brutal. So basically, they obviously are the leaders of this whole hair metal thing in a way. But yet it's odd that they are a UK band, but they absolutely are just doing everything. I mean, the vocal thing is ridiculous. The lyrics are terrible. It's all just stripper rock all the time, plus power ballads. So all sorts of crazy stuff like that. I just feel like, they almost like invent this thing or discover it. They're in so early, whether it's Mutt Lange or a combination of these pop sensibilities that they latently apparently had. They are in here absolutely leading the charge and doing great at this thing. Pete has sent me a message. Like I say, I can't hear him, but Pete has sent me a message, so I'm just going to wrap up with updates and whatnot. I wanted to mention that I do still have the Motorhead book available. So that came out through ECW Press. This is only early days. Also related to the show, I still have the Saxon book available. And Iron Maiden album by album. I've got 4 copies left of this. This is the panel situation that I did with Quarto. And, in this, I've basically got interviewed about Iron Maiden, every single studio album. We've got Blaze Bayley, Rich Davenport, Bobby Blitz Ellsworth, Marty Friedman, Matt Heafy from Trivium, Tim Henderson, Chris Jericho, Jimmy Kay, Sean Kelly, Mike Portnoy, Frank Potvin, Kristen Rosenberg from the Iron Maidens, right? Brian Slagle, Nita Straught, Iron Maidens again, and Amit Zappa. So 4 copies left of that one. And we've got History in 5 Songs, the audio podcast, Contrarians, all that stuff. So I got to obviously I think I'm going to move everything over to my new computer after this, because I've had this loose connection with audio in, and now it seems to have completely given up the ghost. So that's it. I'm out.